and welcome to the first TNTP Literacy Fireside Chat. This is going to be an introduction to Firesides, what they are and why we've engaged in them, as well as an intro to K-2 writing. So, what was a fireside chat? Well, during the 1930s, well before the advent of television, some 90% of American households owned a radio. Over the course of his presidency, President Roosevelt gave approximately 30 radio addresses known as the fireside chat. Roosevelt was not actually sitting beside a fireplace when he delivered these speeches, but he was behind a microphone-covered desk in the White House. Reporter Harry Butcher of CBS coined the term fireside chat in a press release before one of Roosevelt's speeches on May 7, 1933. The name stuck as it perfectly evoked the comforting intent behind Roosevelt's words, as well as their informal conversational tone. Roosevelt started the fireside chat as a way to stay connected to the country and to be accessible in a time of transition and challenge. We're stealing a couple of these ideas for our own fireside chats. We designed them to address the ongoing questions and needs of our Charlotte List community through accessible webinars as well as in-person visits. So we wanted to find a way to increase access beyond the ILTs and our coaching work with you, because we saw a need to provide some more frequent, ongoing support around some specific issues involving instruction, curriculum, and intervention. And we also wanted to find a way to be useful to all LIST stakeholders, whether you're an MCL, teacher, coach, or leader. We also wanted to provide support that was really timely and actionable, as well as immediately accessible. The questions that you have that are most burning about your classrooms and schools right away, TNTP can answer these questions in this format, addressing them in an ongoing, accessible way. Finally, we wanted to provide access to like a more unstructured but supported work time. Therefore, TNTP members will be available in person several times over the course of the spring to provide support to all your practitioners with help tackling issues, solving problems, or answering questions. Whether you want to learn check reviewed, want to look at data with a thought partner, or decide on some coaching feedback, we can help. So this week for literacy, your big question was, our students are struggling with writing to demonstrate comprehension. What are some strategies and actions we can take to infuse writing into the K-2 curriculum and classroom? Well, this is a really big question, but in short, we want to just kind of touch on a few points for you by discovering some opportunities within the curriculum you've adopted to implement some writing instruction that addresses comprehension, as well as discover some supplemental curricular-aligned resources that will help support writing instruction within K-2. So let's start here. Why is writing important in K-2? I mean, I think we have that feeling in our guts, right? That writing is important and even students as young as kindergarten should begin engaging in it, but why? Well, we know that the ultimate goal of writing is to articulate knowledge of an understanding. My mentors at the Vermont Writing Collaborative are fond of saying that writing and knowledge cannot be separated. In fact, the more knowledge we instill, the better our writing will become. And this is true for our kids as well. The better their knowledge base is, the stronger their writing is. So effective writing has an appropriate focus for thinking about and synthesizing knowledge, and structure to develop and present that knowledge. So at the heart of effective writing is the building of knowledge and understanding, which can be articulated in spoken and written language. I love this quote because it says that we're not writing in order to regurgitate something that we are reading. We are writing to express our synthesis of what we've read and thought and discussed and worked out. We are actually displaying in writing the ultimate result of thinking. And we want that for K-2 as well as all of our kids. We also know that there's a ton of research showing the benefit of high volume of daily writing in K-2. We know, for example, that when writers write every day, they compose even when they're not composing. When students have the opportunity to write every day, they increase their fluency, they increase their proficiency, and honestly, they increase their comfort with it. We know so many students that struggle just with the basics of getting through the 5 minutes of writing. When we do this daily, we know that it just becomes habit. There's a lot of research that Hattie and Gladwell have done as well, discussing that students must develop habits and practice in order to grow in a skill or a goal. We have to do this for increasingly long stretches of time, and it has to be a regular touch point. Right? And then finally, just knowing that increasing writing improves writing quality. But we also know that just increasing writing is not enough. It depends on what kids are writing about and what the rigor of that writing is. Right? We can go right to the standards to learn about the rigors asked for in writing and language. Writing and language are a clear part of the K-2 standards, separate from the foundational skills standards. Now, I always like to call the foundational skills print concepts, phonological awareness, word recognition, phonics, fluency. These are the riding the bike standards. Once these skills are mastered, they can never be unlearned, right? Just like I can never learn how to ride a bike, I will never unlearn how to decode a word or to read with sufficient accuracy and fluency. That's why it's so important that we cement these skills early, as in grade 3, we know the standards make a shift towards reading to learn rather than learning to read. Writing and language standards are not part of the riding the bike standards. They reflect the need to grow with writing and language ability with increasing depth and complexity over the course of the grades, and this work starts in K. As early as kindergarten, for example, capitalization and end punctuation is a part of the standards, as well as supplying information through writing, drawing, and dictating through informational, opinion, and narrative topics. So you'll see that we have writing, explanatory, and narratives as part of the K-2 standards, as well as a focus on a topic. Context includes word relationships, sharing, research, and commanded conventions, punctuation, and writing. So you can see just in the examples here, the standards, even in K-2, are rich with the ideas that writing and language need to be an integral part of the experience of young children's education. So let's dive a little deeper and talk about how writing is actually embedded in the core curriculum. The core knowledge curriculum, both the skills strand and the listening and learning strand, is actually pretty well aligned to the writing and language standards. You can find the alignment document at coreknowledge.org in the resources section. But as you know, the work of aligning curriculum to standards is really difficult. So it's good that Core Knowledge has done this for you with a series of very detailed alignment documents that have been vetted by some national literacy experts. As you can see from just this small sample that I've pulled, the writing standards are embedded in the work of the Core Knowledge curriculum, both in the skills as well as in the listening and learning strands. The Core Knowledge goals also highlight language of the standards themselves. For example, the listening and language goal for grade K. We know sometimes these skills overlap. For example, in grade 2, planning, drafting, and editing the narrative touches both the language and listening strands, as well as the skills, expectations, and standards. We know, for example, in terms of crossing over as well as being part of both skills and listening and learning, the workbook for the skills strand provides daily writing opportunities and can be used in both whole or small groups. So we know that looking at student data at the individual level pushes us to think about what writing is going to be good for students at different times. But you'll see from these examples that I pulled from K1 and 2 workbooks that students do have the opportunity daily to engage in writing that's appropriate for their grade, whether they are working with phonetic skills or they are describing what they've learned about in their reading. A focus specifically here on comprehension, knowing that students are reading and then naming 3 things that a bobcat hunts. This also encourages students to begin the work of text-based writing, understanding what they've read and exhibiting that knowledge, which is so, so important in later grades. Right? We also know that questions are provided in the workbook to accompany the skills readers, but teachers may actually choose to create quick daily writing extra tickets that assess vocabulary acquisition, skills development, and comprehension. So for example, from the text The Coin Shop in grade 1, unit 5, teachers may decide to look at comprehension as well as just writing and language abilities. There are times that the workbook for the day does not lend itself to a writing task that will provide this data, so teachers can create a quick writing task. So with the coin shop, for example, teachers may create a potential exit question like, who was Jack? Where did Nan and Kate find the coin? Or describe the coin using words from the story. Again, a very text-based approach to students articulating what they have experienced through their reading. This example comes from grade 2, insects. We know that in particular, the core knowledge listening and learning strand lends itself beautifully to writing. Part B that accompanies each text and topic has a ton of writing abilities. The hard part is actually choosing one. You'll notice from looking through the Part Bs that they actually encourage students to practice different writing types. In grade 1, for example, in Frontier Explorer, students pretend they are Lewis and Clark, and they write narrative journals. Here in grade 2, core knowledge asks them to write expository statements and drawings about different insects that they research. The power of this is not just in the daily writing, but writing about what they are learning in order to engage with this knowledge, work with this knowledge, write about this knowledge, and ultimately display their thinking and cement that knowledge in place. We also know listening and learning supplemental guides are super powerful resources, both for English language learners and struggling students, and opportunities for all students to write even more. These two examples come from grade 1, Frontier Explorers in Astronomy, and are examples of students deeply engaging in the material they are looking at, whether they are articulating what they've read and adding to what they see in an app, or students creating journal pages relating to the read aloud content they've done, using possessive pronouns, and using academic language like sketch, compare, and journal. So let's look at a few additional writing opportunities and resources. This one was my favorite outside of a text in my K-2 classroom. In addition to the Part B journals that students do, which are connected to those texts and topics they're working with, daily writing journals are super fun and engaging. They can be aligned to meeting the standards and are a great way to monitor student progress in writing and those writing the bike standards and the ability to like word and letter recognition. So here's some sample questions. Describe your family. Draw your favorite season. If you could be an animal, which would be and why? Right? It's really important to note that here, this is great daily practice of writing and the opportunity for teachers to get some formative information and to give feedback. However, this should not replace writing about what they are reading. This is an essential daily step of soaking up the listening and learning they're doing in their strands as well as in their history and science. And this activity is also great for small groups. You can easily connect the topics to the listening and learning strand without making them super boring or repetitious. Remember, writing is about displaying knowledge and experience. The more you can connect topics to these, the better their writing will become. There's often a misconception, especially in K-2, but in upper grades as well, that writing has to be formulaic first, i.e. students must learn how to construct a sentence before they should be allowed to write a sentence. This is absolutely not the case. We absolutely have to use some direct instruction to support students in mastering the standards, such as teaching end punctuation, and we see that come alive in the standards. But please remember from the research at the beginning of this session, we learn to write by practicing, getting feedback, and improving, doing that every single day. We learn to remember things and cement knowledge by engaging with it, speaking about it, writing about it every day. So structure is important, yes. Punctuation is also important, yes. But allowing children the space and ability to practice, experience, get feedback, play with punctuation and make some mistakes, but ultimately we are looking for the building of knowledge, the reveal of knowledge in their writing, not necessarily whether or not they use a comma correctly every single time. The Vermont Writing Collaborative has a really neat bank of several different lesson plans, as well as sample writings that goes with those lesson plans. If you and your teachers are thinking about experimenting with some other types of writing that actually works directly with text and knowledge, this is a great place to start. The book written by the Writing Collaborative, Writing for Understanding, also provides a lot of really interesting ideas about helping students write more effectively. When I was a teacher, this book completely changed my view of how students write and how students learn to write and what's most important. There's a resource called In Common on Achieve the Core. It's a place where teachers can learn the expectation of the Common Core standards through writing, through specific prompts, exemplar responses from actual students, and annotated responses. So if you are looking to do, for example, a deep dive into what some exemplary responses look like, even in K-2, this is a great place to start.